Today is the day that Jesus was nailed to a cross. For that reason, this day used to be called Black Friday. Now we refer to this day as Good Friday. To call this good may be even harder to understand. The cruelty of the crucifixion is certainly horrible. But Jesus himself transformed Black Friday into Good Friday when he said, "Now my heart is troubled. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour?" No. It was for this very reason I came to this hour. John 12:27. This day is good because, as strange as it may seem, Jesus said that this is the hour that would glorify him. This day is good because of what Jesus did on this day for us.
Pilate questions Jesus. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?" But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed.
Now at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. The governor said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" All of them said, "Let him be crucified." Then he asked, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified."
So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See it for yourselves." Then the people as a whole answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." So he released Barabbas, for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of Jews!" They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on his head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him.
As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to the place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes amongst themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head was put the charge against him, which reads, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from that cross." In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and the elders, were mocking him, saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now if he wants to. For he said, 'I am God's son.'" The bandits who were crucified with him also taunted him in the same way.
Jesus would speak what we now call the 7 last words. They are not 7 individual words as such. In fact, there are more than 50 words that make up 7 utterances. The 7 last things he said before he offered his life for us. When they came to the place called the skull, there they crucified him along with the criminals, one on his right side and the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." What a disappointment this first word must have been to those who believe that people should get what they have coming. But what an assurance to the people who also knows that he himself would suffer if he got what he deserved. For as the Apostle Paul tells us in his letter to the Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. If Jesus' first word on the cross was to ask the Father to forgive his very executioners and torturers, do you have any doubt that he will forgive you?
The second word. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminals rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence. We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise." Imagine that, the only person we know of whom Jesus promoted directly into heaven, a self-confessed death row criminal, an 11th hour convert, not one of the apostles, not a member of his own family, not even a very good person. Death house conversions are so common that most people, especially church-going Christians, write most of them off as frauds. It is tempting to say that this man was accepted because Jesus must have known the man's heart. The truth is just the opposite. The man was accepted because of Jesus' heart. This particular criminal had a friend in, shall we say, high places. They say that we may well be surprised whom we'll see in heaven. God only knows which former mortals will be there. What we know, and all we need to know, is that the same one will be there who promised, "Today you will be with me in paradise."
Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there, and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son," and to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. Here, Jesus is not only dying, but is dying in excruciating agony. He has spoken 3 times. The first time was for the eternal well-being of his executioners. The second time was to comfort a convicted criminal. And now, this third time, was to care for his own mother and the only apostle we know of who stood by him at his execution. Mary was most likely widowed at this time. She was now about to lose her eldest son. Such a woman in that time and place, without a male protector, was extremely vulnerable, almost reduced to the status of a non-person. Mary now could only look on, totally unable to care for her firstborn. But now he cares for her. From the cross, with only moments of breath left, with the eternal fate of all humanity hanging in the balance, will not leave this life until he arranges for his mother's care as he entrusts his beloved disciple and his mother to one another.
The fourth word. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all the land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus had now been hanging in agony from 9 a.m. in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, when he screamed his fourth plea. He had taken this life of ours upon him. He had done our work and faced our temptations and borne our trials. He had suffered all that life could bring. He had known the failure of friends, the hatred of foes, the malice of enemies. He had known the most searing pain that life could offer. Up to this moment, Jesus had gone through every experience of life except one. If there is one thing that sin does, it separates us from God. It puts between us and God a barrier like an unscalable wall. That was the one human experience through which Jesus had never passed, an experience which must have been doubly agonizing for Jesus, because he had never known what it was to be separated by this barrier from God. But, as the Apostle Paul wrote to the Corinthians, God made Jesus, who had no sin, to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. He carried all the sin of the world in order to pay it off with his sacrifice. That is why he can understand our situation so well. In human experience, as life goes on and as bitter tragedy enters into it, there come times when we feel that God has forgotten us, when we are immersed in a situation beyond our understanding and feel bereft even of God. That is why we need never fear to go to him when sin cuts us off from God. Jesus has gone through it all, and there is no depth of human experience which Christ has not plumbed.
Later, that now all had been completed, and so that the scripture could be fulfilled, Jesus said, I am thirsty. A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put a sponge on the stalk of the hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips. John 19:28 through 29. Not long before this, Jesus had asked a Samaritan woman for a drink of water. When she hesitated, he told her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." John 4:10. Now he is the one who is dying. And once again, he asks for something to drink. Even now, the tormentors he had just prayed for mocked him, once again by giving him wine vinegar. But that would not be his last drink, for he has promised us that whenever we give a drink to a hurting person, we are, in fact, giving him something to drink as well.
The sixth word. When he had received the drink, Jesus said, "It is finished." With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. What? It is finished? Everyone must have had thought that what he was saying was that his life was now finished. Anyone standing there would certainly have said that he was dead. He was dead. However, his life was anything but finished. What was finished now was sin and death and having the last word. What was finished was sin being able to separate us from God. What was finished now was death being a permanent thing. These things were now only as temporary as sleep itself.
It was now about the 6th hour, and darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour, for the sun had stopped shining, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." When he had said this, he breathed his last. Luke 23:46. So now the Son prays to the Father the same prayer we were taught as children to say before we went to sleep. "Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take."